We'll just start off, I think, with some introductions before we dive into the topic and get going. Obviously, I'm Mac. I'm not the reason you're here. Preet's the reason you're here, so I'll let him give his intro on his background, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great, Mac. Really, really glad to be here and having this conversation with you today. I'm Preet Singh. I'm the founder of DesignX community. We are a design community started originally in Toronto, now a global design community across chapters across Toronto, New York, Vancouver, Amsterdam, and have done events even in London, Montreal, a couple of other places. Started about 3.5 years ago as a side project, and since last year, it's become my full-time gig. And then background-wise, I've been a designer for over 13 years, but went to school for civil engineering. Yeah, so that's been quite a winded path, but community building has been like a consistent kind of a part of my entire career, right? From starting a nonprofit when I was in engineering school to running a t-shirt startup rooted in social community, community around social causes back in India, and then DesignX. So yeah.
Wait, no way! I had no idea you started I did a similar thing. I had no idea. I did a t-shirt. Just side note, I did a t-shirt company like 5 years ago now. It's like a little side. It was like one of those experiments of like, can I do a physical product? Because I'd always done like apps and things. And it was called 50, Fiftee. So like 50 and t-shirt. And the idea was 50% of each t-shirt went to like a good cause and things like that.
Well, that's amazing.
It ultimately failed, but
yeah, physical good startups are really, really hard. I did mine 12 years ago, 12 years ago. That's actually how I became a designer. I was trying to make a t-shirt and started learning CorelDRAW and went down that path. And did it for 2 years. It was called Karma Republic. And so the whole thing was like earn good karmas by wearing t-shirts that have social messages on them. Now it's become quite common, but back in India, that time it was quite new.
That's cool. It's funny. Just side note, I had no idea of that, but I knew there's a reason we were friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of overlap. So with DesignX, right? I think you originally were like event-based community, right? And that was where you made your money, I guess, as a business was through events and ticket sales. But obviously with COVID, those in-person events are I guess for another probably year or so, not exactly possible. So It was this year that you decided to transition to a paid community model, right?
Yes, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So when we started about 3.5 years ago, so the funny thing is we actually started as a Slack community for designers in Toronto. And then the events were just like, we have 100 people on the Slack group and all of us should meet. And we threw together an event, and the response was just incredible. The tickets were quite affordable, but we sold out right away. And then we were like, oh, okay. And then we had design companies who were like, oh, we would love to pay for the pizza and the beer or other things. And that's when it was not as strategic or planned, I would say, and we just kept going with the flow. And over the last 3 years, because the paid membership model started just about 2 months ago. So until then, we dabbled in a lot of different experiments. The online part of our community always remained free. All webinars, Slack community, reports, newsletter, everything was always free. And as you said, we always charged for the events. And we started dabbling in high ticket events, which were conferences, since about last 2 years. And that's when we realized that again, it's like conferences at the the top of the pyramid, so to say, where companies would pay you the most, and then you would have your regular meetups, workshops, and then would be anything online in terms of sponsorships again. And it was extremely frustrating to me personally, because I saw the effort and the impact to be exact opposite, or not exact opposite, but at least the online consistent community building takes so much effort. Like you're managing a Slack group throughout the year, creating content, fostering conversations, and we would have companies not even willing to pay a few $1,000s for the whole year. But then you do 2 days of back-to-back programming and you call it a conference, and companies are like, oh yeah, we have budget for that. So
it's a lot of the old school stuff, right? Where it's
yeah,
conferences used to make the business world go round, and that's, I mean, especially this year, not so
yes,
true anymore. So, yeah, would love to, if you go through the kind of the thought process on why you decided to go paid. I think it's fairly obvious there when the sponsorship revenue dries up from events, but like why you decided to go paid,
yeah,
and how you approached it, right? Because I think it's I've seen communities do paid models successfully, but
mhm,
typically they start paid, right? Like they're a premium paid community from day one. It's always a
right,
challenge to go to someone and be like, hey, here's this thing that's been free for 3 years. We're going to
right,
charge you money for it now, and getting that reaction, and finding that balance between keeping members happy and actually creating a sustainable business.
right, right, right. True, absolutely true. So I think I've always been, because I didn't come from being a community builder. I was a designer, passionate about community building. So I was always questioning the usual ways in which things were done, right? So the conference sponsorship versus regular community building sponsorships annoyed me a lot. Selling tickets is uh, the least favorite part of everything I do. I enjoy putting together events, curating speakers, content, everything, and then when I have to go and like market and spend so much time creating social media assets and sell tickets, that's something I don't enjoy. So I it was at the back of my mind that how can we build something really sustainable where we are building a community throughout the year, and if we can figure out what exactly does our community want, and we get the kind of the invest have them invested into all the programming we do, it would be a much more sustainable model, instead of doing these kind of peaks, right? So we're doing free stuff, free stuff, free like free webinars, conference, and then we are back down free stuff, free stuff, free stuff, right?
And most of the work is actually in those troughs of free stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how do we, kind of like flatten them up? Like it's still sponsors will pay more for those kind of things, but how do we at least make our community a little more sustainable by getting support from members who are really invested in it? And the second thing was we were also growing our team. So we started, we have a web developer on contract, a designer on contract. We even had a full-time like events person until 2 months ago, for the last 6 months. So they were, and we put together kind of a paid compensation model for our key volunteers as well, since last year, which is again something we had to figure out. So we knew where the money was going, and we wanted something more predictable for where the money was flowing into the organization. So to your question earlier about the thoughts were already there since about, I would say, almost a year. COVID definitely almost like triggered us or pushed us into one direction. Our sponsorships were down by almost like 75% as compared to last year because of COVID, which was a massive, massive number, especially with me having gone full time working on it since last year. The timing maybe was not the best in that direction. Um, and then when we thought about the paid membership about 3 months ago, that okay, let's finally go down that direction, we were really cautious about not trying to isolate any of our existing members. So as you said, they've been having all these things for free for the last 3 years. So how do we communicate to them our challenges and make a very reasonable ask? So what we did was, to be very honest, like my first instinct was, okay, whoever is the current member of the community, they get everything for free, and then anyone new joining in, we start charging them like whatever, $30 a month, or like a higher tier, reflective of our efforts. But then again, we've also seen that we do a lot of free stuff, free events and all, and I don't know, I definitely feel that when people pay even a little bit, there is more appreciation for what you're doing. And so we decided to charge $2 a month. Like that was our ask. So for existing members only, right? And the second thing we did was we asked them to pay the $2 per month upfront. So it was $24 you had to pay upfront. So it
For the
would
full
make
year.
you think, yeah, 24 a year, sorry, and it would make you think a little bit, right? Like, okay, do I really enjoy being part of the community? All those things, and it was, to be honest, like it was a good. Kind of a reflection of our efforts to me as well, because I'm here. I left a really high paying job last year, was doing really well, and now I'm putting in like 70-hour weeks every week. So am I just building stuff, for no one, or is that something that the audience really values or community really values? Yeah, so we took that plunge, and we communicated that $2 right now, and then it'll be $4 off, and the $2 offer was like for the first 30 days or 40 days or something.
And that was,
sorry, go ahead.
I was saying it was paid only, right? There's no free membership.
Right.
It's if you didn't switch, you were removed from the community, essentially.
Right. So one thing which is sometimes works in my favor and sometimes doesn't is I just generally jump into things, and then I'm like, oh, and then
I know the feeling.
Right. Yeah. So we initially we were like, yeah, we're going paid, and everyone should not have a problem paying $2, right? Then we did realize that, okay, we have a Slack community. The Slack community has 5,500 people. Slack has no way of automating the removal of people. And I was like, oh shit, like I'm not going and doing remove to everyone that's not paying first. So there were some logistical challenges. So what we went with was, if you do not pay, you can stay on the Slack. You only have access to the announcements on the random channel. Announcements, you can just consume what we're doing. And random channel is where, we still see people come in and just they use it as like a notice board, and they come in and they're like, I'm speaking here, or I'm doing a user research survey. And that's cool. If you want to be on the random channel and participate in that, that's really cool. We still do some free events. So we actually had an event last week, which was a completely free talk. Our regular newsletter will continue to be free. So there will be kind of a free part of the community, but it would be drastically less in terms of the features that are available to you.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. KV has a question here that says, existing members pay $24 a year, but new members pay $30 a month for new members. I think $30 a month was just an example you put out, right? Not.
Yeah. So, yeah. And to be honest, we experimented in the beginning. So initially we thought $24 a year, we'll keep it open for existing members, and anyone that's new to DesignX will pay $4 a month. So it was $48 a year. But then we quickly realized that $2 a month was too low for us to even run, based on the conversion rates that we were seeing, that it was extremely low. So we were like, okay, we're going to cap the time that existing members have to convert. I think we gave them 30 to 45 days. I don't remember exactly. But after that, we kind of cut the limit there. We still had few folks, especially students, who were like, oh, I was not active on the Slack group. I didn't see the message. Can I please avail the discount? And we did honor that. And also, I forgot to mention, those people that signed up early have that pricing plan. So it's like a lifetime $24 a year plan, whereas anyone that's joining now is $48.
Makes sense. So with the balance of events, free, paid, and all those things, what do you think of? I've seen a lot of people talking recently about this idea of you come for the event and stay for the community, or come for the contents. There's been 30 or 40 different variations of that line, and it's almost like the opposite of your old model, right? Your old model was you pay for the event, the community is free. Build the community and they'll funnel into the event. Yeah. But I think there's some thinking out there now about I think sometimes it's hard to convince someone to pay for a community because it's hard to understand the value you get from day one. When people pay for something, they kind of expect I pay for something, I get something, right? And I think at times it can be easier to say, okay, if you pay, you get this event, because that's a very specific time box thing. If you don't pay by this date, that event happens, it's too late. Right. And then by paying, you kind of, or the other way around. Sorry, I had that backwards. You get into the event and the community comes in. But what do you think about that? I mean, it's pretty much the exact opposite of your original business.
Yeah, that's so true, and I never made that observation. I think to be honest, I was a little, I did put my blinders on a little bit, and I was very focused on making sure the community is sustainable. We are, I saw what happens when our sponsorships just go away, and companies that had verbally committed were just like, oh no, sorry, budget change. So my focus was, how do I make the community sustainable? We did get some pushback, even though it was very less. But I was expecting at $2 a month, there should be zero pushback. That was my, the idealistic scenario, especially when you've invested so much into giving completely free stuff for 3 years. But out of the 800 people that signed up, we had like 6 or 8 folks that did kind of were angry about the change. So you're right. It is quite a bit of a mental model shift, but I was being very selfish, into making sure that the community stays, because yes, people will complain a little bit, but then if I follow that route and I can't sustain the community in 2 months, that's a bigger detriment, right?
People always complain about change though, right? And it is always very hard to break that barrier of not paying to paying, regardless of the price, right? Like going from $2 to $4 is easier than going from 0 to 2, even though it's the same dollar change.
Yeah.
So there's also like the opposite effect I've seen in some communities where actually like, because like communities can sometimes have like negative network effects, right? Where they get too big for themselves. They're like too hard to moderate. There's too many people. So I've seen some communities going the other way of saying, listen, we don't want more than 1,000 members in our community, but it's going to cost $500 a year to join. So, even if we cap it at 1,000 people, that's you can still run a sustainable business on that. So what are you curious on your thoughts on kind of like the difference between like size of community versus like price and exclusivity of community?
Right. That's absolutely true, and that was in fact one of the kind of the back of mind thoughts too, because when our community touched 5,000, our work increased a lot into increasing engagement, getting conversations going, and all those things, because natural organic engagement does drop a little bit, and that's you're absolutely right. Like we were also thinking, like we have so much of kind of like dead weight, or a nicer term for that, and thanks to also using your tools like Comsor and all, it showed me that we have 5,000 people, but there are about 3,000 people that are active. So 2,000 people are literally the numbers there, but it doesn't help us. So I wanted to also use this as a reason to get only the serious, engaged folks into the community, and so that we can then focus on the conversations they're interested in, instead of build it for all.
I've used the line like the cardinal sin of community metrics is size of community, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like I know companies that invest in community and will totally spend the money to hire 2 or 3 full-time community people for a community of 1,000 people. And I also know companies that have communities of millions of people that are hesitant to hire a single community person dedicated to it, because the value that community provides both to a business and to the members is not almost never aligned and correlated with size of community. Some of my favorite communities are like 60 people in a Slack group. And it's like, and it's actually the fact that it is only 60 people that makes it valuable, right? There's almost like an inverse correlation between like, it's what is it, Dunbar's number, right? Like the number of actual social relationships you can maintain. And as a community gets too far beyond like you being able to know everyone, sometimes it creates like negative engagement loops. Which actually is a good lead in here to KV's second question here. Did you have a lot of drop off in the size of the community once you started charging for it?
Drop off in the size of the community. Oh yeah. So how we went about was like we had 5,000 people on Slack, and when we started the the paid membership, we gave a deadline. And after that deadline, we actually kind of closed down all the public channels except for announcement and random. So in a way, we kind of like removed everyone that was not paid, so which was about like 4,200 plus people or something. And then for all the paid members, we only had private channels. So once you sign up for a DesignX membership, we add you to all those paid channels or private channels, so to say. So the conversion was, like right now it was like 800 out of 5,000. I'm blanking on my math a little bit, but like 20%, roughly 20% or 18%. So that's been the conversion so far. Now out of the active people, like, if we had 3,000 people, so out of that 800 or so converted till now. And then what we've been doing is we've been using those early members. So they are still kind of the early beta members for us. And we're using the funds generated from the membership revenue to now actually build out the membership features, because this is, again, like a bootstrap community. We don't have any external funding or any of those things. So all the money that's coming in, so, we built our talks library. Now we're building a members directory. We're doing some other changes to the member dashboards at the back. So it's kind of leveraging, the revenue from these first 1,000 folks who will register for the paid membership to actually build out those membership features.
That makes sense. I think it's a good approach. I think a lot of times, like, there's all the classic advice you get with, startups, be lean, MVP, test, and iterate quickly. And I think a lot of those same principles can be applied to community building, right? Like, find that core set of people, see what works, see what doesn't, iterate, try, keep building. And it's, to say you get it right on the first try is never ever true. And it's always funny when people are like successful and they look back and like, oh yeah, I knew from day one exactly what I was doing. Like, no, you didn't. Whether it's community building or startup building or anything like that, it's never quite as simple as that, right?
Yeah, yeah. We experimented a lot and still continue to. Initially, when we were moving to a paid model, our community was always asking for, because we are on the free Slack plan, the community was always asking for archives of the conversation or ability to access history of the conversations. And so while Slack was not an option, we started looking into other options. So at one point, we actually we said we are closing down Slack completely and we're moving to Circle, which is another, most of the folks would know, another incredible community platform. But the biggest difference is Circle is content first, Slack is conversations first. And so we thought people are more interested in the content. So we started the Circle group, and we were, at that time, they both were in parallel. So we had the Slack and we were like, okay, we're moving to Circle. So all the paid members got added to Circle. And beyond the introductions thread, there was no activity. And we noticed a big drop in engagement. So we quickly, within a week, we went back to the drawing board. We put out a survey for our paid members. I think at that time we were about 400 paid members. And we realized that there was just something about, having Slack always open because of your other communities or other work. Folks shared that they valued the ease of access to someone to have a quick conversation much more than having the historical view of all the conversations in a channel. They wanted the history, but how many of them actually went back ever to look at the history was like,
it's like a classic thing. I know it's a misattributed quote. That's not a real quote, but when Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? Yeah. And I think it's a classic case there of like, conceptually, no one's going to say, oh, I want message history to get deleted, right? Everyone's going to say, of course you want it to stay.
Yeah.
But how much is it actually used? Not that much. And I've made the argument that I think the lack of message history in some Slack communities acts as like a positive engagement loop in a way. Because you're like on a forum, like our new forum that we launched for the community club, right? I could disappear for 6 months, come back, and oh, cool, here's all this content I missed, right? But once again, it's content, and it's like I can't really comment on it. It's not really live content. I can't engage with it if it's 6 months old. And Slack, if I disappeared for 6 months, who knows what I would miss, right? I had no idea. And it's like it's a little bit of like that. There's a little bit of like a FOMO element in the way Slack works that I think kind of funny enough. It's funny that Slack is designed for workspaces, not for communities.
Yeah.
And I think that FOMO element is really bad for work, but really good for community. So it's kind of funny that one of Slack's core, engagement loops is kind of better for the people that aren't actually paying for Slack.
Right, true. That's very
but
true.
that's Slack. Right? I think you made a good point though about like the barrier to engagement, right? Like that's, I get people all the time who are like, what platform should I pick? And it's like, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like, it's whichever one's the easiest to start, and you can always figure things out later. And I think the way you're going about it is a really good example of like your community is, I wouldn't call your community a Slack community, right? It's a design community of which Slack happens to be one place your community engages, because you also have your newsletter, your events, the content you put out, your social media, all these different things. And it's when you have that mindset shift of like, versus like it's Slack community versus a community that uses Slack, I think it also opens up a lot of doors for you to get creative with the monetization angle, right? Like I've seen some communities like the Slack is totally free, but then like there's all these other things you can layer in there that help it, which I guess is a segue to my question of like, I know you talked a little bit about like benefits and like how you do some events are for paid members only, but what other thoughts do you maybe have around like striking that balance, right? Like, because you are keeping the community open. It sounds like if you have 5,000 members on Slack, like 80% of them are not paying right now.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you strike that balance of like inclusivity and exclusivity?
Yeah, I think to be very candid with you, like my focus right now is only on those 1,000 people, the 800 whatever 34 something members we have. The focus on inclusivity was a big reason that I kept the membership price so low. We initially we talked about all these different models, like, okay, students get it for $5 a month, but if you're a senior designer, you get it for $10 a month. And then you're a leader, you pay $20 a month. But then you start to add in things like, what if someone is a senior designer but they're in India, right? And I'm very well aware of the salary differences and all those things. And then it's just like, I'm sure, like SaaS companies solve for that, right? Netflix is not $10 a month or $10 a month in India. But we are not at that scale and, can't handle those complex pricing structures. And that's why we were like, okay, $4 a month, it's still quite an affordable price. And even right now, like I have people that approach me who are like, I am a student in Philippines and for $4 a month is also a lot for me. And then, we figure out, we help them out, even if it's, kind of like sponsoring them from our side. So that's definitely a big aspect into making sure that people who are interested in the benefits of a paid community member are, we are inclusive of that segment. But in terms of the, focusing on the features of what we are shipping, I'm right now completely focused on those 800 plus members and how do we deliver value to them, even if it's just $2 or $4 a month. So an example would be, we realized that everyone's doing a lot of virtual events, but one thing about virtual events that everyone really enjoyed was when you would come to the event, you would come always half an hour before the talk began, so you could have a little chit chat with people interested in that specific topic. And then once the talk got over, you would again have another half an hour to stick back and, talk about that speaker or talk with the speaker, doing those kind of things. So for our paid members, even when we do a free event, we spin up every time a private channel, and all paid members who are attending the event get added to that channel. So we start that channel 2 days before the event, and once the event is done, 2 days after that, we retire it. So doing these kind of things, so doing these kind of things to provide value, even when we're doing something for the masses or it's open public, how can we deliver extra value to our paid members?
Yeah, I think that's great. It's a great way of like drawing people in, right, and then giving them a reason to get more. It's like the classic freemium model. Like, hey, you get this thing, but you could get so much more.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, Tom. See you later. Thanks for tuning in. There'll be a recording, by the way, for anyone who has to drop out early. So you're not missing. I mean, you're missing the live fun. But another question here from KV. Did you ever consider making a smaller paid Slack for just the members?
Yeah, I did. Like we thought of quite a few different models, like starting another Slack group for the paid members. And to be honest, like I was just trying to make sure that I'm not spending my entire focus on just managing the Slack community or managing the mechanics of the Slack community. As of now, like even managing just one Slack group takes a lot of work,
especially with a couple thousand members in it.
Yeah, and we have a separate one for design leaders right now. And so we already had our hands full with Slack communities. So we were trying to make sure we streamline things more and more. And also like right now, because all the time we are just focusing on Slack, that's what our community sees us as. They see us as doing virtual conferences and doing, community building on Slack. But I really want to focus my efforts and my team's efforts on building more content, more reports. There's so much more to explore in terms of the channels for community building. So that's why I didn't want to kind of, venture out a lot in just within Slack.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I think it goes back to what we said before around like being a Slack community versus a community that uses Slack. Exactly. Right? It's a very subtle difference, but I think long term it's a very powerful difference if you can convince members that you're not just like, oh, it's another Slack channel, because I think you do run into a little bit of like Slack fatigue and things like that. And have you seen at all like an increase in engagement among the members who have paid, or is it really just the engaged members that paid, so the engagement hasn't really changed?
We definitely have seen an increased engagement from people that we never used to earlier kind of hear from, right? So I see completely new faces now in those private channels, maybe because the community also feels a little smaller, because that Slack channel is now not 5,000 people, but 850 people or so. Also, I think depending on the the topics, the engagement does vary a lot. So while our activity in introductions is not as much because we aren't adding that many people every day, but people are more, sharing their personal challenges a little more. It feels more, I think, again, like a little bit of a more safer space. Because also we do know who's replying, who's answering. It's not just anyone can jump in and yeah.
There's also like a little bit of like the psychology of like, oh, I've paid for it, so now I have to engage. So
Exactly.
I've seen similar things, and there's another community that I've helped out with a bit that does they're going for more of like the lower member count, like higher premium price point. They're like $500 a year to be a member, but they've seen a similar thing where they actually try to do like a free trial because like obviously $500 is a bit of a heavy lift, and there was no balance. It's like it's paid or nothing. And the problem was when they did a free trial, people would join, sign up for the community, sign up for the Slack, and then do nothing because it's very, very low friction to sign up for a free trial. And then their trial would end and they're like, all right, well, this was a useless community. Because I think one of the things that people struggle with a community, especially when doing a paid one, is unlike Netflix or Instagram or other like, audience-based consumption things, or like I can pay for Netflix and I don't have to put any effort in to get value. I just spin it up and I watch things, right? Community, on the other hand, is like a little bit like this weird mental gap because you actually have to put effort in to get value out, right? You can't just like be in a community and be like, cool. It's not just like following a Twitter account or following an Instagram or paying for Netflix. So there's a little bit of like this block of people have to engage to feel like they've gotten value out of it. So how do you, I guess the lead there into this question is like, how do you deal with like onboarding new people? Do you have any people, I guess, that have paid new and whatnot, and how do you onboard them and make sure they're engaged? And do you provide like refunds or anything if 30 days in they're like, this was a mistake? How do you just handle that whole kind of like first 30 days for a new member?
Right. So right now we do nothing, to be honest. So it's again, part of our like extremely lean way of building out the membership model. So right now, all that happens is when you pay for the membership, like, so again, I shouldn't say we do nothing, but as compared to my ideal scenario, we're not doing much. So right now, what we do is you pay for the membership, you get the regular like email confirmation, all those things, and then you get added if you're not an existing Slack member. So you get invited to our Slack community. If you are an existing member, then you get added to all the paid channels, and then like a DM from me, which is like, hey, thank you for your support, blah blah, and we've added you to all the channels, but feel free to leave whichever one does not, is not of interest. So there are again a lot of limitations on the Slack mechanics, right? So because these are private channels, you can't just see the options and kind of like join whichever one you want. So we kind of have to give you the access to all, and then you decide where to leave off. What I would really, really love to do is, and we are kind of trying to figure it out from our website dashboard, the member dashboard, is figure out a way for you to, first of all, have access to all the different channel like controls. So you can join a private channel whenever you want and leave it whenever you want. Have access, or not access, but as part of your welcome onboarding emails. I would love to figure out a way to, I don't know how to do it at scale, but I've seen certain, SaaS companies do it, which is like a Calendly link and have like a quick, either 10-minute meeting or something that I can personally connect with each paid member to just understand their goals and what they're looking for when they're joining this community. Because right now we do not get a lot of context around why someone's joining. We know their role and all the other things, but we don't know why.
Could you do that in the email confirmation after they buy membership? Just include a Calendly link or a link to a small survey, and not 100% of people will do it, but even if 50% do it, you'll get better data than nothing.
Exactly. So I think definitely we can do that. I've just been more scared about my own calendar, and I'm like, how do I make sure that it doesn't get overbooked? And
if you on Calendly now, actually, I had the same problem. I found this the other week. You can say like max X numbers of this event per day. So if you're doing a little 10-minute onboard, you could say, hey, for this specific event, cap me at 3 a day or something, or 2 a day, or whatever you want. And even if you have open space, it won't let people schedule if they already have a bunch. So it's there's ways to do it. Anyways, that's a side note. You and I can dive into that offline more if you want.
That's really helpful. I think I'll definitely do that. So in onboarding video, more controls in the member dashboard. And one other thing that we are experimenting with is creating micro communities within our paid community. So even when it's 800 members, quite often you're looking to connect with someone really specific, like you're looking for a designer that works in an agency in a small team. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we can give our members the power to send out kind of like announcements, but in a personalized manner, based on the logic that they would select. So yeah, those are some of the things that we're working on.
Awesome. And before we get to KV's question here, I have another one around like, well, we're still on monetization a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about other ways to monetize the community? I mean, obviously you did sponsorships, and it sounds like you still have some level of sponsorships for events. You have the paid memberships now. Have you explored or thought about other ways of monetizing beyond direct memberships?
Right. I think beyond the regular like events and conference sponsorships and the existing Slack community membership, the only other way that we are right now, at least we think, is a feasible kind of a next evolution of the paid memberships, will be something around highly personalized coaching slash mentorships. So we are still trying to figure out which way to go, because coaching is very different from mentorship. And there are a ton of like free mentorship programs and all those kind of things. But at the same time, our community is still like, I still struggle with finding a mentor. And that's the direction that I'm talking about is actually is quite a different direction. So that's kind of leaning more into the education side of the community. That's what I'm really interested in. So I'm looking into these days into income share agreements, something like Lambda School.
You and I should talk about this more offline, because I have so many thoughts on this that we could ruin. That could derail this whole conversation.
Another 24 days. But yeah, that's like the education component is personally really frustrating. Like we have a lot of students from design boot camps or boot camp schools that come. And, on the other hand, when I talk to design leaders, they're like, I can't find a designer. I don't know what these bootcamp schools are teaching, and the bootcamp school grads are like, I can't find a job. So there's
like a gap between those two that you could fill, essentially, right? Yeah. I think that actually goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, the idea of like, come for the content, stay for the community. I could totally see you being like, I don't know what you would charge, but like obviously like selling someone on like a proper in-depth course is a lot more than $24 a year. And I could totally imagine you just being like, buy this course, the community is included lifetime membership for free, because if you're selling a course for, let's call it, even if it's $1,000, right? They'd have to be in that community for what, 40 years for you to technically have lost money. Like I think it's actually almost a better financial incentive for you. And you could even do things like, if you're a paid member, you get discounts on courses and things like that. People could just take the course as a one-off. And I think that model will work really well. I've seen quite a few communities going into that more kind of education space. We're doing things like that. We have our little mentorship program in the community club now, where we're heading more in that education space for a similar thing, right? It's like people are like, you got the people who want to hire on one side and people who like want the job on the other side, but like there's this weird kind of gap where it's like they haven't quite connected, right? And if you can fill that and be like, well, because you're more than a community, right? You're just like a design,
right?
I think the word would be, but no, I think there's a lot of room there to do it. Also, the other way you should monetize is by selling your awesome shirts, because every time I talk to you, you have an awesome DesignX shirt on, and I want one. And I would gladly buy one. Even I'm not even a member, and I would buy one of those.
Yeah. There is a half put together Shopify store right now on our website that I'm trying to get done before holidays. Just to maybe not even for the money, but to get some hype up, right? Get some excitement. But yeah.
I mean, I honestly, like, I'm not a member of the community, and I would probably pay. I've seen 3 or 4 really cool shirts from you. And it's obviously you're a designer, so you know how to do them, and you've done t-shirts in the past. So I mean, there could be a whole little like, I could see you leveraging the community to build a whole little like line of t-shirts that like designers that resonate with designers, right? Like I think Dribble does a really good job of like producing merch. It's not even Dribble branded, some of the merch they put out there. It's just like stuff that designers would wear, or even like collaborating with people in your community and like doing rev share with them. Like that would be such a cool way to elevate the member and be like, hey, here's a shirt designed by this person. I could even see if t-shirts are not going to be a huge
Right.
moneymaker for you, right? Even if every single member bought a t-shirt and you made $10 a t-shirt, it's,
Right.
$8 grand. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not going to build a business. But I think if you use it as like an engagement mechanic, right, where maybe doing things like maybe the money from the t-shirts funds like
Right.
memberships for people who can't afford it or something like that, right? So it's like, hey, the member can design the shirt, and by doing so, members can buy shirts, they get a cool shirt, and they bring new members into the community. Like if you can build that sort of loop out, I think that would be, anyways,
Right.
rabbit hole
Right.
of an idea, but
That's a wonderful idea. Like we've been for the last 2 years, we've been doing holiday craft fairs. So we always have like a holiday DesignX holiday event, like physical event until last year. And we would do a craft fair where designers from our, because every designer is usually like a maker on the side. And so we had designers from our community, bring stuff like stickers or soaps or chocolates and sell at the craft fair. So we were actually talking with the team about doing the virtual version this year.
awesome.
That could be something really cool based on what you're talking, yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, I think that, like I said, I think there's a lot of room in communities to like personalize your monetization model. Where I think like step one is you charge the member. Okay, cool. That's like the obvious step that everyone takes. But the next step is like how like your community is what it is because of the members and because it's your specific community, right? It's not just another membership model, right? It's like, and I think there's ways to, like, you can do so much more than like a traditional SaaS business or like, Netflix versus Hulu. Like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, they're all the same. Like, yeah, they have different kinds of content here or there, but like they can't personalize their model beyond like you pay and we give you content. Whereas like a community actually has room to do that, whether it's like education or the t-shirts or whatever. Anyway, like I said, you and I'm happy to chat more about that separately. I have like 2 million ideas running through my head now that we went down that tangent. We got 2 questions here in the chat. One from KV. How many people join per day or per week?
Right now, we have about 2 people on average joining per day, so 8 people a week. And we're kind of like right now, the focus is on building the stuff that we had promised to our early members. And I think starting January is when we'll kind of go more on the road of, okay, let's convert the other 4,000 people that I haven't converted. Let's do some company like corporate kind of like plans and all those things. We've been again experimenting based on demand. Like we had a studio where the design director was like, okay, I don't want to reimburse like $48 for each person. So can we just get a license for like the 8 designers on my team? That's like a massive space or opportunity that we've still not kind of gone down on. So
even discounting it, like, hey, like
exactly,
yeah, like, oh, you're buying 10 memberships for the price of 8.
Exactly. Yeah. Discounting.
There's a lot of room there. I think it's similar to the idea of like what I said before, the cardinal sin of worrying about number of members. And I think I see that a lot with communities where it's like, they always focus on bringing new members in, but they don't focus on the existing members. So you end up with this, like, it's like trying to fill a leaky bucket, right? It's like you're dumping water in, but the water's going out. So it's like, yeah, you might have 10,000 members, but it's always 1,000 that are active because you're replenishing them at the same place that they're going inactive. So I think you're definitely taking the right approach of like perfect the existing model, then worry about growth, because otherwise you're going to be growing a broken system.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I've got a question here from Steven. Do you do anything to re-engage those members who've become inactive and stopped visiting your Slack?
I think what's really worked best for us has been the newsletter. And so we've been trying to rework our entire format for the newsletter, including the content, and see if there's we can give them more content out of the paid membership content, just like snippets, again in the freemium model, to help them re-engage. But newsletters is something where I've seen a lot of people kind of re-engage back into Slack because they see like, oh, I missed this on Slack this week or this month. And I should go and check out that conversation. So that's been something that, that's kind of the only thing we've been doing much for people that have completely not been active on Slack. But again, as I was, and again, Mac did not ask me to, plug in ComStar so much. But
I didn't ask you at all.
I really did find it helpful, because it even shows you the members that have not have been that active. Like, how can I kind of send them, and we have the email, we have everything. So how can I send them a more kind of personalized flow? And I don't know if there's a way to automate it using Zapier and all those things that, when you see someone drop and be active on Slack for 3 weeks, shoot them an email with some content, latest content from Slack. So again, I would say half execution is done, but half is still in the idea stage.
Yeah, I think it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot like building these like re-engagement loops, right?
Yeah.
And it's and I think it goes back to what we said before, where it's like, it's not a Slack community, it's a community where Slack happens to do one channel. Like within our own community, obviously we're not a paid community, so it might be a little different, but we have members who are incredibly active, open our newsletter every week, engage with us on Twitter, never once open Slack because that's just not their thing, right? We have members who are like our new forum that we launched. More than half the people who've signed up on that forum are not in the Slack, right? It's like because people, and that's why I think it's this balance of like you're trying to build community that you can kind of like own and pull people into, but you're also trying to go to where people already are, right? Like, and that's where it's like building those loops out where we also have members who are incredibly active in Slack that don't subscribe to our newsletter or, don't follow us on Twitter and things like that. So it's, I think the real secret there is like being able to unlock this idea of like your community is actually this like broad network. It's not just a single channel, and like building out the engagement loops that they work with each other. It reminds me, have you ever seen the classic Walt Disney like business graphic he did it was from like Walt Disney in 1957. Like the guy was way ahead of his time from a business perspective, and he had like all the different businesses that sit within Disney. So like the theme parks, the movies, the music, all these different, like the comic books and things like that. And he'd drawn out like lines on how like each one kind of helps others. So like the movies provide music to the music department, and then like the music department like makes movies stay relevant for longer because things like that. And I think community building is very similar, where it's like there's these different pieces and like you have to figure out how they connect in kind of like one virtuous cycle, essentially.
Right. That's amazing. I'll definitely try and search for that graphic.
I'll send it to you on Slack after this. It's if I forget, just remind me. But it's a great graphic, and I think it's I feel like I should make a community version of that.
Oh, that's true.
Oh God, now I got another thing I got to do.
Yeah, and like just as you're joking about it, like that's something I definitely struggle with, which is like finding down which paths you do want to go down, right? And keeping the balance of quality, execution, all those things. And especially in our case, because again, we are not a company kind of based community, or we have like high tier membership. So it's like a very lean team. So everything is to be like, do we really start another newsletter or build that report, or do we put together another 3 days of conference? So that's something that's, again, as you start to venture into paid memberships, initially we thought, every time your idea is like, oh, we are charging members, so let's give them 50 things now instead of 5. But now we are going down the opposite route, which is like, let's just give them 3 things, but those 3 things have to be incredibly executed.
KV just linked us here, the Disney business model drawing. If you want to see what I was talking about, like they have all these different pieces and how they connect, and it's pretty cool. It's there's a higher res version somewhere. I can find it and I'll share it with you on Slack again. But it's like when you start to dive in, you're like just like subtle ways of how they influence each other. Where from an outside looking in, you're like, wow, there's like 7 different things going on. And I think a lot of community teams, when I talk to them, whether they're at companies or not, have that problem where it's like, oh, well, Twitter, that's social media. Like email newsletter, that's marketing's department, right? And I think obviously you're a little different with like your entire business is the community. But I think for community in general, it's whether community owns it or not, like the principles of building community apply to everywhere that you're engaging with users, whether it's in a traditional community, Slack, forum, whatever, or not. And I think it's like this idea of like community thinking, kind of like, they have like product thinking or design thinking. Like there's just like a way of approaching like building those relationships and that trust and that authenticity that is more than just building community.
Right. I love that community thinking. You have a lot of frameworks, Max.
Another thing I got to write down in coin.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I don't have anything else, any other questions or thoughts on my end. If you have any closing thoughts for folks who are, well, we got one more question here. Okay. Did you say that running this community is your full-time gig? Because at $2 per year per member, you're not getting paid enough for all that work. Welcome to startup life.
Absolutely, KV. So I did venture on it full time last February, um, and last year was good. It was worth the effort, of going full time on it. Even though I didn't draw any salary, but I could have, and thankfully I didn't. So this year we could sustain ourselves with the savings in the business. But that's been one of the biggest reasons of what I'm trying to do is um, community, like managing Slack. Even though like this year, I spent a lot of time because again we all went virtual and that was the main thing. But managing Slack is not something I kind of left my job for, and so that was the main reason of going down this path of monetizing the existing community, but also kind of trying to automate a lot of the logistical things around the community. So I've been spending more time there, and those $2, $4 a month, that's what it takes care of. It's like all the expenses, if you're hiring the contractors for the websites and all those things. So I can then free up myself to focus on the more bigger things that we're
The
working on.
longer term vision and
Exactly.
Like that, right?
Exactly. So that's kind of been more like I'm not worried that if I start to work on a different side project or I'm working within the community but on a new initiative, that the whole existing community dies down. So
Yeah, so you've built enough of a foundation that it survives, right? I think it's the classic starter thing. Whether you're building a community or a product or a service company, right? I think there's a saying that's like the average new business takes 3.5 years to get to profitability, and if you're a tech startup, it's never. Apparently, it's the standard these days. But it's I don't know. I think it's sometimes you got to take that leap of faith, right? And it's like I've seen people that like they won't quit their job to work on something because it's not making enough money yet, but it's also not making enough money yet because they're not committing themselves fully to it. So it's like there's never a right answer. It's never black and white, right? The timing is you got pretty unlucky, I think, with the timing. But at the same time, if you hadn't been full time on it, right, when COVID hit, you might not have had the space, the time, the mental energy to do what needed to be done to keep the business afloat if you also were doing a full time job on the side.
Absolutely. And again, like having gone full time on DesignX, I definitely cannot see myself going back to a job. Like I enjoy it a lot.
So welcome to founder life. It ruined you for any other job ever.
Now the only thing remaining is the monetization part, but rest everything I'm like, yeah, I'm happy, I'm content. And even for the money part, like right now I think our total revenue has been like 35,000 from the existing members because we charge for the whole year, right? This 35,000 was not there at the beginning of the year, even though everything that we are doing is still the same. Like, we were still managing Slack. We're still doing that. We're still doing virtual talks. We're still doing the virtual talks, but it's just that now people are paying for those things, right? So that's been again, it's like a different way to look at it where, because some folks, we've had members of our community be like, I want to pay more than this. How do I do that? And I'm like, writing down on my to-do list of figuring out a gift a spot model or all those kind of things. But definitely I think in 3 months, if again we look at just the 3 months and the conversion and the revenue, it's pretty decent. But again,
it's not a point in time thing, right? It's the classic cheesy saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're like, you've been working on it for 3 years, but you've really only been working, like going from 0 to 35,000. I think most startups would be most startups would kill someone to get that level of revenue growth that quickly.
Right.
I think that was an awesome answer. It's I think that applies beyond community building, and as we've mentioned. But I know Run the World's going to kick us off here in 4.5 minutes, so probably a good enough time as any to wrap it up. But thank you for joining us. I think this was an awesome chat. Now I have like 6 ideas that I want to go like explore more. So thanks for giving me more work to do.
No, yeah, I really enjoyed it, Mac. And again, KV, others, anyone else who has any questions, I'm pretty happy to share the numbers and share all the fuck ups, a lot of fuck ups we did in this transition to a paid community. So there's been a half-written Notion blog post on my laptop, but I don't know when that's going to get complete. But feel free to reach out to me on Community Club. And thank you, Mac, for creating this amazing community. And I would pay for it. So again, if that's one of the ideas, maybe there should be a paid community. I would definitely pay for it.
No, I think we'll keep it free, but we've got some other things coming down the pipe that'll be more interesting, I think. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining, KV, and everyone else. Thanks for the awesome questions. We'll have a recording of this up on the community club thread probably end of today. And if anyone's watching this or listening after the fact, I'm sure you can ask questions after the fact in that thread, and Preet will do his best to answer them.
Yeah, really happy to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.